All right, welcome back. Continuing on now with our TI11 Preview series, we're going to be talking about Entity, one of the last teams I'm going to be talking about that made it through their regional qualifiers. And of course, in this series, I'm going to be going through each and every TI11 attendee's past DPC season, taking a look at it, trying to dissect it a little bit, and then finally giving a brief little preview as to what we can maybe come to expect from this team at this year's International. Next up on the list, as previously mentioned, Entity. I've already done my review for Sonics, Talon, and Hokori, so if you've missed those, feel free to check those out. They're already uploaded, and I'm going to be going through this list of the attendees based on where they've placed in the DPC standings from bottom all the way to the top. So if you're at all curious about when your team that you're cheering for will maybe get uploaded, you can use that to figure out when I'm going to be uploading it. And of course, if you don't want to miss that, like, share, subscribe, join the channel Discord, link in the description down below. And yeah, let's get into it. So Entity. This is a really interesting team because it is one of those teams that just no one was really expecting too much from heading into this DPC season, and then it's just been a slow, steady progression of improvement for them that has been really entertaining to watch and has made them one of the most exciting teams heading into this year's International, especially given just how strongly they ended off this season heading into TI11. So first things first, let's take a look at where they placed in the DPC standings. They finished with a total of 615 DPC points, which is especially impressive when you think about the fact that that was entirely amassed through one tour. Which is absolutely incredible. However, it was not enough for them to qualify based on DPC points. They end up finishing 17th place internationally, just missing out on the top 12, and they finished 5th place regionally. Taking a look at their roster, we have Pure coming in playing position 1. He was previously, of course, on VP, had a bit of a controversy going on there, and ends up getting picked up by Entity, and it's felt like ever since he's joined, it's really just been fireworks. This team was starting to sort of meander a little bit, and this change in the carry position has really looked fantastic. We, of course, also have Stormer playing his mid lane. He has been a very prevalent piece to this team and their improvement. It really has felt like he is able to take over games, make the space for his team, and is a big reason why they've been doing so well. Playing position 3, of course, we have Toby as well, Ketaomi on position 4, and Fishman on position 5. We also have Coach Metpoom coming in, and they are going to be heading into TI with no TI experience on any of the players, including the coach. The furthest that they've ever made it to this point for Stormer was finishing 8th in the TI9 qualifiers, finishing 3rd place in the TI9 qualifiers for Fishman, finishing 7th in the TI9 qualifiers for Toby, and for their coach, and this was as a player, not even as a coach, he finished 6th to 10th place at the TI6 qualifiers, and I believe that was from the CIS region. And as for Pure and Ketaomi, this is their first time even playing in any TI qualifiers, which is pretty shocking. But they did pretty damn well in their first attempt, and they're going to be having a shot to prove themselves despite being rookies to this year's International. So taking a look at their DPC results, and this is one of my favorite parts about looking at a team like this that has had this steady progression, is you can see it in the results. Kicking things off with Western Europeans' first tour, they were in Div 2. They were not even eligible for any major attending any major to this point, and they finished 1st place overall. They do have a tiebreaker match in which they win. They finished with a 6-1 record, and they booked themselves a spot to the upper division as well with Brame, who they would end up actually knocking down back into the lower division in Tour 2, where they had a bit of a rough time, which is not unusual for teams coming into Western Europe's upper division, which is incredibly competitive, but they keep their head above water. They finished 6th place. Again, as I previously mentioned, they have a tiebreaker against Brame where the loser would get sent back down. They win that series, they knock them back down, and sure, it's not the best results. They keep their head above water, finishing with a 2-5 record. So heading into Tour 3, didn't really know where this team was going to be going. We've seen a bunch of teams coming in from the lower division in Western Europe, not really finding that success, having a really difficult time adapting to the sheer competitiveness of the upper division of Western Europe, and Entity was one that just barely kept their head above water. So what were we going to expect heading into Tour 3? Were they going to kind of stay in that same middle of the road pack heading into Tour 3? Would they drop back down to the lower division, or would they end up striving even further? and the latter ended up being true as they finished 4th place overall. So not a huge improvement, but they definitely make their name as one of the more reliable competitive teams of the division. They do win out in a tiebreaker match too, that against Team Secret. They finished with a 4-3 record. They secure themselves 100 DPC points, and because they finished top 4, a spot at the Arlington Major, where even then, even with this slight improvement from the team, I don't think anyone was expecting them to go on the run that they did, where they finished top 6. They finished 5th and 6th place after an incredibly dominant group stage performance, finishing 2nd in the group with a 3-3-1 record. They then start in the upper bracket. They lose their first series, being unfortunately placed up against OG, which has been a team that they've been struggling quite a bit with. But regardless, they have a nice lower bracket run, knocking out big name teams like Evil Geniuses and Boom, before eventually getting knocked out by Aster, which is another team that has been giving them a bit of fits. But regardless, what an amazing run. Again, they gather 615 DPC points within one single tour. Had they had one other tour just like that one, they would have qualified on points alone. And you can really see their progression in the matches that they've played against other teams attending TI11 this year, in which there were 64 total games and they went 35-29. And you can see here, Tour 2, things did not start off very well. They were losing a lot of series, and although they were losing those series, they were at least forcing them to 3 games and usually winning game 1s in these series, which I thought was really, I wouldn't say strange, but rather something to take note of. They definitely were doing their research heading into these series, getting off to a strong start. They just weren't quite to that level of adaptability where they would be able to then close out a series on one of these best teams, which was something that would end up changing with time. Tour 2, again, 2-1 loss to Tundra, Gladiators, Liquid, Secret, and then an 0-2 loss to OG. Things look rough, but they do keep their head above water with Nigma Galaxy and Brame both getting knocked down to the lower division. Heading into Tour 3, they start off really strong with a 2-0 win over Gaming Gladiators, who just a few months ago had won the regional finals and had attended the Stockholm Major. They do lose 2-0 to OG. Again, OG, a team that they have yet to overcome at this point. A nice 2-1 win over Team Secret. They then falter to Tundra and Liquid, but they get to face off against Team Secret once again in those tiebreaker matches where they would beat them once again, which gets them into the Arlington Major. And you can see right here, this group stage, fantastic. They win against Na'Vi, Boom, Evil Geniuses, and they draw Tundra, Spirit, and Beast Coast, and the only series that they would end up losing was to Aster. A bit of foreshadowing there for their demise at the end of the tournament. Taking a look now again at their series here, they lose to OG. They knock out Boom and Evil Geniuses, 2 teams that they had beat in the group stage. So not only are they making these improvements, but they're very consistent. They're able to beat the teams that they've beat before. They're not falling back in any way. They're just struggling against teams that they have yet to figure out to this point, which would be OG and Aster, who would be the 2 teams to beat them on the main stage. So heading into the TI qualifiers with this deep run, I still don't think a lot of people were giving them nearly as much credit as they should have. And it makes sense when you have big name teams like Team Secret, Team Liquid, Nigma Galaxy. You got players like Puppy, Kuroki, Sumail, Miracle. Of course, the Liquid stack that maybe doesn't have a big name like that, but they are definitely deserving of all that respect. It makes sense as to why people would probably look over Entity and just assume that, yeah, they're a pretty good team, maybe top 4, maybe grand finals, but I don't think they're going to win this whole thing. They didn't drop a single game throughout the entire TI qualifiers. Sure, there were some close games, but they didn't drop one throughout the entire thing. These guys have looked fantastic. It just feels like everything has been working. Again, the roster changes that they had to make throughout this tour, bringing in Pure to play position 1 has just felt like a perfect fit for the team, and everyone is playing at such a fantastic level. They win against Alliance, first of all, 2-0. Of course, they're not a team attending TI11, so they're not listed specifically up here, but they knock them out. They then face off against Team Secret. They beat them 2-0. Liquid, they beat them 2-0. And then a rematch against Team Secret in the grand finals where they sweep them 3-0. Finally, taking a look at their stats now, and this is picked over games from the entire DPC, not just teams against that are attending TI11, in which there were a total of 90 games that they've played throughout this DPC with a win record of 58-32. Their total game stats on Radiant, they were 30-25. Dire, 27-7, a monstrous win rate on Dire for a near 80% win rate. absolutely bonkers. We then have first pick where they went 30-14. Again, fantastic win rate. And last pick 27-18, which is less than their first pick win rate, but still a remarkably high win rate. For Radiant first pick, they were 21-12, and their only orientation that they were actually sub 50% in was Radiant last pick, where they went 9-13. For Dire first pick, they went 9-2, and Dire last pick 18-5. Again, their Dire win rates, basically all of their win rates except for Radiant second pick, were very, very high. Finally now, looking at their win rates based on game length. For games that were less than 40 minutes, they were 35-23. In games longer than 40 minutes, they were 23-9. So, in fact, they were getting better as games went on, which is something that is pretty uncharacteristic of teams that are fresh onto the scene. Usually new teams will be very, very good at the early portions of the game. They catch these better teams off guard, but then as the game goes on, those better teams with that experience start to catch up to them. That has not been the case. Entity has been a team that has been able to adapt, to learn, and to overcome throughout this entire year, and it's been really remarkable to watch. For game ones, they were 26-13. On game twos, they were 26-11, and in game threes, they were 6-8. They were actually having a pretty tough time. A big reason for that is the matches that they played in Tour 2, where they had 4 game threes in a row against teams attending TI, and they lost all of them. For hero stats now, before we get into that, some more stats. Average GPM 2314, average XPM 2852, average KDA of 4.0, and an average match duration of 37 minutes and 26 seconds. For hero stats, they picked a total of 81 different heroes throughout those 90 games, the most picked of which being Bane with 25, Winter Wyvern and Clockwork with 20, Batrider and Enigma with 19, Tiny with 18, and Visage with 17. Their worst heroes were Templar Assassin, who had 1 and 4, which is pretty funny because that hero was pretty prevalent, especially near the start of this year. We have Venomancer, who was 5 and 8, which is funny because Toby, that's like one of his classic heroes, and they really just didn't have the best results with it. I don't necessarily think it's Toby's fault. I just think the hero is a little bit lackluster right now, especially with the whole BKB meta that dominated the most part of this past DPC season. But regardless, that was really it for the extent of their worst heroes. There were not very many heroes that had a particularly poor win rate. In fact, for a third hero, I had to pick Weaver, who just went 0-2, which is not that bad, really. A lot of their heroes that didn't have great win rates were usually sitting at or around 50% win rates. For their best heroes, we had Undying, 7-0, which was a big hero that they would pick quite a lot throughout those qualifiers. Beastmaster, 6-0, Death Prophet, 6-1. We also had Razor, who was 8-2, Chen, who was 10-3, and Batrider, Stormstormer's Batrider, which was 13-6. For most banned, they banned a total of 95 different heroes over those 90 games. Beastmaster with 25 bans, Viper with 24, and Io with 22. Again, putting a lot of priority on making sure that the offlane does not get out of control, giving Pure a great game, and he has been making it look fantastic so far. So, that does it for the review portion. To end off this video, let's talk about what I'm looking forward to from this team heading into the International 11. 1, these guys have been on an absolute insane road to improvement, overcoming, and just learning as a team and really coming together. Will that continue at this year's International? Will they be able to overcome the skill of these teams heading into this year's International? Their results at the Arlington Major would tell me, yeah, because these are a lot of the same teams that are going to be attending this year's International, and they had a pretty great job at beating these teams. My one concern is that heading into the Arlington Major, a lot of these teams maybe did not know all that much about Entity. This was a new team coming into the Tier 1 scene, and so maybe that gave Entity an advantage. And now that they're going to be heading into TI, teams might be a little bit more prepared for what they have to come. Another thing I'm looking forward to is their draft orientation. Again, Dire has been one of their best orientations, and I look forward to seeing if they're going to stick to that, if they're going to prioritize that in the draft. And ultimately, I'm just super stoked to see how they do because they're in a really weird position right now. Again, a brand new team entering the official Tier 1 scene of Dota. Will they sink or will they swim? Will they meander? Will they strive? I really don't know, and that's what makes me so excited to see how they do. This is such a fun stack to watch, and I would love to see them do super well. And I'm hoping that they can make it at least through the group stage, and I wouldn't be surprised if they end up in the upper bracket. But I pass the question off to you guys. What do you guys think about Entity, their chances at this year's International? Do you think they're in above their heads, or do you think they're going to have another performance similar to the Arlington Major? Do you think they finish top 6, or do you think they flounder in the group stage? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. Again, join the Discord, link in the description. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I will be having previews for every single team attending this year's International going up on my channel before the last chance qualifiers, and then once those qualifiers are done, I will be doing the 2 teams that qualify from that as well. So if you don't want to miss that, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.